to Bimcast episode number 9. Today we're looking into circular economy and sustainability and how this will change our industry going forward. The construction industry is infamously known as the 40% industry because 40% of the CO2 is created from the construction industry, 40% of waste is coming from this industry. So we need something to change this. We need to value building materials when they have been in there, how we catalog what we have, how we use the data of what is in our buildings that we reuse or recycle instead of throwing away when we are constructing our cities. So Norway has ambitions to become a leading country within the green circular economy, but we have come quite late to the party. The EU has had circular economy high on the agenda since 2015. And our neighbor Finland aims to be the world's first circular country by 2020. That's a seriously cool ambition. Our guests today, though, are all key players in the construction industry's transition to circular economy. Cathrine Barth, co-founder and strategist for Circular Norway. That's a perfect guest today, I think. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we have managing director of buildingSMART Norway, Anstein Skinnarland. Welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Jæktnes, CEO of Elektroforeningen, the Association for Electrical Installation Companies and Wholesalers. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So I want to start with a question for each of you. What will be the most important thing for the construction industry to do in order to become sustainable and circular? That's an easy question, right? Nobody wants to answer. Come on, Cathrine, you go ahead since you have this title.
First of all, I think you addressed the challenge that we see the challenge and we want to solve the challenge and realize that we're stuck and locked into a linear economy. It's nothing wrong being in a linear economy, but that was made for another purpose, which was the challenges of our last century. This century we have new challenges, and for this industry to decide that we will together solve this and go from being a lagger and behind runner, also in digitalization, that we can use the opportunity to be spearheading the new economics of the next century. That would be really interesting to see, and I truly believe that's possible.
Yeah, and to achieve this, we have to have good data and information of all the things we are building with what the material that the buildings, for example, consist of. And we have to digitize that information.
I think also that circular economy is nothing you can enter yourself. You need to cooperate among not only the value chain but the value cycle. And I think that big challenge is actually getting a lot of people to join in and accepting not to be a center of the circular economy, because there is no center in the circular economy. It's a network of cooperation. So just entering the circular economy jointly and working heavily together, sharing and gaining, and also acknowledging that the strength is in with the cooperation, not the competition. So I think that cooperation will be a new competitive edge in the circular economy and in the building industry if we succeed with this.
Oh. Yeah, that's a very good point, because the whole construction industry, if you bring the architectural, engineering, construction, operations, the whole life cycle of a building, there is a lot of different players that needs to be part of that game, and to have all of them at the same time join in on the circular economy, circular promise, I think is a great challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think also when you look at circular economy in the building sector, we will meet a lot of new business models and a lot of new entrepreneurs and startups that will join this arena. We are talking a lot about going from product to services. X as a service will be a new on the agenda. And in order to do that, you need to share information, and a startup going into the circular economy in the building sector will need a lot of data, as Anstein told you. You need access to a lot of shared data, which is on a common platform, which makes it possible for you to build solutions on top of that. So you need actually to get access to standardized data, and at the same time share and build new business models.
The idea of having okay, I have this building, I'm supposed to demolish it because I'm going to build something else. And then I need to know exactly what's in that building so that I can recycle it in a nice manner, sell it to people who can use that resource for something useful. That's a simple idea, but why is it so difficult? That's an easy question to answer, come on.
In a silo-based value chain, where there is not so much contact from who designs the building, who owns it, who runs it, and who demolishes it, there we discovered that the exchange of data throughout this value chain is not consistent. And we see that the data set is actually disappearing the moment we get to the waste moment. So the moment you classify a building as going to be a waste material, we're going to a totally different ball game. It's sort of lawless or another industry domain. And the construction industry loses the ownership to its material and is not able to align to take back the materials. Secondly, I would say, when did the decision come to demolish the building? Because in a circular economy, you will put all your emphasis to retain the value of this building as long as it might last, instead of doing the first and the foremost thing is to tear it down and build new ones. That's a very linear approach, actually.
I think also that if you look at building as material banks, today we are looking at the buildings as waste when we are demolishing them, because building today without identification, without the material passport, is considered to be waste because you don't know what's in the building. So when you start digitalizing the building, a BIM model or similar, you will be able to have an overview of what kind of material is in the building, and you are then able to keep a register, which makes it actually as a building as a material bank. And then you can, instead of tearing down the waste, you can lift out the values when you finally would like to reuse the building materials.
I believe some of the challenges also that most building owners, they only build once, so they don't have any incentives for taking care of the materials in a circle or perspective. I want this building and I want to own it for 40 years, and that's the scope I have. So our challenge now, when we are cooperating to achieve circular economy in the building and construction industry, we want to have people to have the scope of the materials, to take care of the materials and look at that as a resource, not only for this building but for the life cycle.
What we see when a building is approaching its end phase very often is that the value of a building is counted in square meters. What's the price per square meter, either if you sell it or you rent it out? But when we go to circular economy and we talk about building as material banks, then we transition our mindsets to see how many tons of aluminium is it in this building body? How much copper can we regain out of this? Is it even possible to count it? And when we know that you can trade material, raw material, on a ship going from Shanghai to Copenhagen 7 times, we can see that you can do a trader's market of materials within a building. This might be abstract, but then we go into what might data and digitalization actually do. We can see that building as material banks is a way of transitioning how we value a building by its materials. And that would also make it more profitable to invest in valuables as marbles, as expensive, and not cheaping out and making lousy construction projects, but actually investing in high-end materials that might be used and reused over and over again.
This is very interesting. We had in a previous episode of Bimcast, we had the football club of Barcelona to talk about how they are essentially rebuilding everything without delaying a single game. And they're tearing down a huge stadium, for example, a huge football stadium with a lot of concrete. And they're saying to us that because they have financial restraints on their whole project, they have to recycle that bunch of concrete. So they are forced to think circular economy due to limitation on their economy. That's very interesting, I thought. And I haven't heard that argument before in any other sort of large projects. Usually you tear it down and you're gone, and like you said, it's like a totally different game with different players and everything.
I think that you are pinpointing actually the competitive advantage of the players in the circular economy. Actually, being poor, having scarcity of resources, is a great advantage in circular economy. If you look at some of my member companies, which are global electrical manufacturers, they are looking at scarcity on materials. So therefore they start reshaping the business models. They are looking into how to reuse materials, how to keep the whole value chain within the company, make sure that you get the resources back again. And that's the reason is that they are looking at a future where products or material like copper, like gold and so on will be limited, and therefore they start reshaping the business model using less materials and reusing it. And I think that if you look at Norway today, we are well equipped when it comes to having enough resources to enter the circular economy, but we don't have the scarcity, we don't have the stress of not getting what we want. So therefore we are a little bit lazy, I think. So that can be a challenge actually.
I remember you said, Cathrine, about this, when do you decide to demolish a building instead of keep using it in a sense and keep extracting value from it? From a individual point of view, if I were to buy a property with an old building on it that I want to live in, I'd like to have upgrade that old building to today's comfort needs with new, I don't know, bathrooms and new kitchens and better insulation, better prepared for the energy requirement and so forth. And normally, or very often, I think the sort of the financials of it makes it cheaper to just tear down, get rid of what's there, and build something new. How do you counter that?
It is certainly transition times, and when we see those who are pioneering this, they're also playing on the team with the financial instruments and with insurance companies, because who are really owning the big buildings? And that's the banks and that's the investors. It's not the building owner really. What we see in Netherlands with ABN AMRO, ING and Rabobank playing together with the construction and real estate industry to investigate the opportunities. They say we are able to actually offer lower interest on investments and loans which are circular proof. And why is that? Because every material will be validated for having an everlasting value without its after usage. That's the responsibility of the architect and for the designers of the building to design life cycles for the materials to never go out of loop. So you as a building owner, you can also earn on your after sales on a building, which is circular.
That sounds like the right approach, because then you're actually putting the cost, the real cost of things. So it actually then becomes cheaper because you get better financing, whatever, to reuse the existing building instead of tearing it down and building something new. That's what I guess.
Your guess is pretty right, because it's a system change which hits all along the value chain, or the supply chain as we see it. And we will see totally new players entering the stage of supply chain, if not the existing ones want to transition. I loved your example of Spain and Barcelona, and also what we see the supply chains when you go to a regular manufacturing and you want to buy stuff and materials for making a new bathroom. You will find tiles where the suppliers say, now we have 60 or 80% of reused materials in these tiles. So you as a consumer can choose to demand reused materials. We also see what is driving this in technology matter is as concrete is scarcity. It's also one of the major causes of the climate emissions. So if you could choose to have reused concrete of the same quality, and you can even, we see in Amsterdam, they 3D print bridges of reused concrete materials. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand this is challenging today's linear supply chain. So who would benefit on this? It's very interesting to see this is a transition going on from both the designer or throughout the value chain as we know it.
And it seems like sort of an inevitable and hugely important change. If we keep going where we are going, it's not going to work. There's a lot of challenges with that, so we need to do something. From my perspective, when I think about this, I see, and I think you were talking about this, Frank, I see a lot of data flowing from the very initial start of thinking about a building and until you decide to recycle some of the materials in the building and so forth. There's a lot of data flowing. And the best approach, in my opinion, is to have open standards supporting that. And buildingSMART, is this something that, or what are you guys doing in order to sort of help this and facilitate this, which I think is the only way to go?
Yeah. When I almost 2 years ago heard Cathrine and Frank started to talk about circular economy in Norway, I immediately thought to myself that they need buildingSMART. They need digitization and open standards to be able to achieve this. buildingSMART is all about smart sharing of information through open standards. We need to base all solutions on open standards to have a free innovation and competition and to create good solutions. And circular economy or Circular Norway, their scope is all industries. That is the society that need to transform into circular economy. But the building and construction industry have to be a means to achieve that. Because the potential for circular economy is huge in this industry, and buildingSMART is working to digitize that information, and that's why we wanted to be part of this. So we now have formed a cooperation with Circular Norway. We have an agreement for cooperation because we have the same goals. To achieve a sustainable built environment, and we have complementary competence and networks that can enable this.
What can software vendors out there do to support this and be part of this?
Of course, they are very important to implement or to achieve this. Digitizing information needs software, and software solutions must be based on open international standards. If not, the information stops between the actors because they use different solutions. So software vendors that wants to get into this problematics or to take market shares in the circular economy, they have to base their solutions on open international standards for information sharing.
I think that if I should have started a software company today, I would have looked into how to accelerate and enable the potential in the circular economy, because digitalization will be actually the enabler. We are looking at sharing platforms. A lot of sharing platforms are based on circular economy because you use less resources and you share resources, like bringing products into services. And the other thing is that you need also to keep tracking of all the materials. We are talking about solutions that can keep the value in the process. If you have digitized your products, your material and everything, and keep register on that, you keep the value in the building. And so that I think also buildingSMART has a very important role when we are bringing up open standards, making information available. Because if you don't have this platform of open standards and available information, it will be demand too much resources from startups in order to go in and enter the circular economy. So I think that's very important. And from my point of view, I think that the cooperation between buildingSMART and Circular Norway, especially when they are now establishing a circular building network within the industry to bring organizations and companies and NGOs and everybody together to join forces and working on the circular economy, I think that's a very good initiative that at least our association will take part in, and I think more associations and companies should do that, because that's, I think, having a neutral arena with competent organizations that have one goal, accelerating digitalization, accelerating the circular economy, bringing people together. I think that's the way to go ahead. So I'm looking forward to that cooperation.
Being a software vendor in this is also, one thing is to be aware how can you help the industry to do business development in this before the regulation hits, because the regulation is really hitting this area. And that is also one of the unfair advantages the EU countries and EU markets actually have, because they're in a very accelerating regulating regime. And being in Norway, which is a non-EU market, how would we say the unfair advantages of developing within this framework? What we do know will come. It will be demanded material passports to every product, to product responsibility. And I would turn to what would be the user benefits of the circular economy. So what will happen in the market? Try to understand the benefits of being an end user, a user of the building or a user of the owner, and not having only the back-end industrial approach. We will also see that we will have new ISO standards coming in, which within 2 and 3 years of time, you will be, and digitalization will be also defining who will be left out, who are not prepared for this. They will not be able to be vendors in a circular market. And when you enter circular procurement processes, are you ready, or is your customer ready to deliver in the circular market? So we have about I would say to 12 to 36 months to get circular ready. And if you are not getting circular ready, I fear that this construction industry might see what has been happening in other industries. I've come from telco, from media, from different kind of industries, and what we see, how could Spotify actually turn a music industry business model which was almost 100 years old, how could it turn upside down within 18 months? And I think this transition might happen pretty fast within real estate and construction. When all the system pieces and bits are put together, we will see that we got those 2-3 years of getting circular ready, and that should any vendor within software development understand.
But then we have to put a value on the material in the buildings and not the square meters. How will we get to that point without regulations? Will the market fix it by itself? We want people to see the value in the materials and the objects of the building. When we digitize that information and have digital building information models, you will have a better opportunity to see what the value is, and you can also enable digital marketplaces for that material, or for the lighting fixtures, for example. You don't have to buy the lighting fixtures if someone else can own that and hire it to you. It's more and more common to have products as a service. Someone is delivering that. Your members are starting to deliver lighting as a service, Frank.
Yeah, I think that what makes it a little bit difficult today is that when you look at a building today and you don't know what's in the building, you don't have material passport, you don't have unique identification of the components of the building, and you don't have product data, which makes it a little bit difficult to look at the value. But if you go a little bit ahead, like in Netherlands for 2030, they are saying that buildings in 2030 should consist of 50% renewable material, and the remaining shall be recycled material from other buildings. And if you then look at the market, what will happen with the market? What will happen with the market for virgin components and material? It will be very difficult. And you need today start preparing the products to be recyclable, circular ready in the future. And if you look at a company like, for instance, Signify, which is often used when you're talking about lighting as a service, when they entered a contract at Schiphol, they were not asked to deliver a lighting system. They were asked to deliver light as a service, which means that they went back to the drawing board and started looking at the products. How can we make sure that we don't have to change the products after 1 or 2 or 3 years because we're responsible for 10, 15, 20 years? Okay, let's make them more, let's make sure that they last longer. Let's make sure they are easy to replace, easy to upgrade. Let's make sure that we can take out the materials and reuse them in new products. So the whole design process has been changed and the whole business model has changed. And then when you look at the market in 2030, I think that a lot of people, like Cathrine told, that if you're buying tiles in 2030, 90% of the tiles will be recycled materials. You might not necessarily recycle a complete tile, but all the materials, and you will have components that are reused in new ways. So that will challenge at least my members' market, especially the wholesalers that need to think on new business models. Why should we sell only new stuff? Let's use the fantastic business model also to sell recycled stuff or build up new business models.
I see one challenge here, and to illustrate it, I have an example or an anecdote. If you were given a piece of land in Nordfjordeid, a small place in Norway, and if you're giving a similar sized piece of land in the middle of Oslo, and you build a building from scratch, if you sell it again in Nordfjordeid, you will not get paid what you paid for the whole construction, because the property value is so low. But if you sell it in Oslo, you will get a lot more than you actually paid for building it. So the location has an important impact on the overall pricing of the property or building or whatever. So how do you sort of take that into account in order to, regulations obviously will force you to use 50% of this and 50% of that and so forth, but the recycle value of a building may not be very important because the location is much more important.
That's why, that's because you think in a traditional way about square meters. But if you think of that building in Nordfjordeid as a material, and you have a marketplace to sell that material, then you, even if you live in have a building in Nordfjordeid, you will be able to put that on an open market and have a price on that. But of course, then you have to digitize your building. That building information have to be digitized. New buildings today are being built by use of digital twins, and you have a digital twin of your building when it's ready, finished, built. But existing buildings don't have that. But it's easy to digitize existing buildings as well. So if a building owner in Nordfjordeid is aware of that opportunity, he can easily get scanned and BIM enable his existing building, and he will have a whole another value on his building.
I have to apologize to the citizens of Nordfjordeid. That was just an example, and nothing wrong there.
You're pinpointing as well. I admire you now. It's only 2 years ago, and now you're saying this is the linear mindset, which says that the value of property and so on. This is amazing, because how we value ownership, that's sort of the value transaction in a linear economy. So how can we value usage? That's a circular. So, and being a newcomer, and not so much newcomer in the real estate and construction industry anymore, see that digitalization, when it entered and has been the topic of the town for a couple of years now, try to sell digitalization, and the advantage would be less cost, more efficient, and even more like less and so and so. And I know in an innovation laboratory, nobody goes to work to do less of this and more difficult to do that and try to sell digitalization with a lot of, I haven't understood the benefits. But now when we go to enter the circular economy, I see there is possible to communicate not digitalization as a solution, but why? What's the purpose of digitalization? Now we can start talking about trust. how now we can start talking about transparency and the benefits of open, because we have to have one language and one currency when we really want to trust the quality of an aluminium or whatever there is. And maybe it's going back to sort of nature or ecological economy, but still this is very sophisticated, because who would actually trust this building of yours in Nordfjordeid and invest just as much in this one as in the middle of Oslo, regardless to where it's put its house feet on the ground. And this is also why do I have a vision that the construction and real estate industry might be a front runner, because the value cycles are so long. You build actually with material that might last from 3 years to 30 years and maybe 300 years if it's a cathedral. No one of the other industries have that advantage. If you go to textile, it's maybe 2 years or 3 years of time. If you go to food, you have with a trust data of 2 days to 2 weeks maybe. So what you are gathering as a system learning, and when you see the purpose of data as the platform for a new economy, it's very interesting to follow how the value will follow the material when we now start onboarding and synthesizing this into a building framework.
I think also we are looking at some trends. If you look at the most companies today, they don't own their own headquarters or buildings. You're renting it. And if you look at a building today and a building in the future, what will actually be a building? Well, it will be an area where you pay a lot of money for getting access to that area where you're putting out a building, and it's more expensive in Oslo than in Nordfjordeid, even though Nordfjordeid is a nice place. And then you put on top of that, today you put a lot of material and somebody owns the material. In the future you will put a lot of contracts on top of the ground. Somebody will deliver light as a service, someone will deliver furniture as a service, someone will deliver the facades, which will be replaced in the future when new rentals come in and be moved somewhere else. So it means that most of the material and most of the solutions in the building will be based on a kind of service or contracts. And then if you sell the building, you're actually selling the ground and a lot of contracts on top of it. So that means it's difficult to evaluate, and the financial sector are very interesting to this, because this means a lot of work for the accountants, it means a lot of work for the auditors, it means a lot of work for the new financial instruments and so on, when you build up structures that will finance the different services that put together will become a complete building. So it's a new way of thinking, and if you look at it today, and we are already seeing it, if you go to Norges Varemesse up on Lillestrøm, they are rebuilding the inside every week when they have new exhibitions, and they are using the same materials. They are renting it out at very high cost every time, but they have a building that is reshaped every week. So if you take it a little bit longer, and yeah, it will be a little bit different. Yes.
Okay, so I'm listening and I'm totally sold on the concept, and I want to get involved and get started, and next time I build a building, I want to do it this way. How do I get started? What do I do?
And I have to give advice to join the network of buildingSMART and Circular Norway, because there you meet a lot of competent and motivated front runners in the industry that will actually bring the bright and brilliant heads together to share and innovate and develop new solutions for the circular economy. And I think that so far, from what I've seen, I think it will be possible also to develop a lot of pilot projects when you have building owners involved and constructors and so on. So I think that could be a very interesting arena to both share and learn. So I will recommend that.
I have this, it sounds very sort of wishy-washy, saying nobody goes into circular economy alone. And what we discover first when somebody, I got the notion of circular economy, I want to be leading, I want to be best. And that is sort of a main driver in a way. It's very interesting to watch, but we know that, okay, you might run ahead, Howard, but you will be hitting so many fences that I would recommend you to go along with someone else within your ecosystem. So I would sit down actually within your management group or within your department and who is feeling the pain of this? Where's the energy actually? What is our waste problem? What is our, and what we see is because it's very tempting to think tomorrow and in 2030, but the cool thing about circular economy, you can start right here, right now. What is actually hitting me in our company? And do I want to invest in a certain project, or do I actually want to do something with Bimcast and Catenda? Could we deliver service for this? Because it's needed so much experience and new learning and new services. But first thing, I'm very impressed that you like the idea. And secondly, those who do succeed, they go into the circular economy truly within a group and with joint forces.
And with the growth of Catenda, you soon have to build your own building, I guess. But you are already a member of the buildingSMART community, a member of buildingSMART Norway, and working internationally in this community. So you will get to be a member of this circular building network through that. And respectively, members of Circular Norway will also be able to be a member of the Circular Building Network. And we are inviting everyone else to be part of this network, to come together, as we did in buildingSMART for many years, to cooperate and to cope with these challenges together. So we have to start there. No one can do it by their own. We have to cooperate. And you also have to, when you will build this building, you have to have good requirements. You have to require and demand for circular principles, and of course digitized information based on open international standards, etc. to enable this.
I think it's very powerful to go together and collaborate across maybe competitive domains and across trades and so forth. It's also very difficult. I know that in Norway we had a great success with the buildingSMART project that initiated buildingSMART Norway as an organization. We had some strong leadership that were able to bring people together and force, in a sense, by being strong and strong-minded, I think, force competitors to collaborate together and work in the same direction. And that was great. And there's still some of the same sort of attitude and collaboration I see. I see in other countries it's more difficult to do. It's bigger countries with more complex infrastructure and organization and governmental setups and so forth. But the collaboration is key. I totally agree. And of course, Catenda would like to do our part as much as we can with that. But I'm thinking of all the other out there listening perhaps to this podcast. What are the advices that you would give them for them to get started and get going and reap some benefit from what's coming? Very silence there, thinking really hard on what to answer now.
I remember the day I understood this is the only way to work and I cannot turn back and do it the other way anymore. And that was the day I listened to the prospect of building as material banks. It was presented by Jad Ozeran. That was 2 years ago, and that was an R&D project run in the Benelux countries. And since then, I've been spending my time to involve and invite more and more people to have, I call that when the light is sort of hitting the ground and you see this is possible, this is feasible. And I see that within our construction industry, when people open their eyes for this, they cannot go back, because they see that, I hope that the listener sees that the way we extract the raw materials from any product that I use in my cell phone, in the chair I'm sitting in, the place I'm eating from, this is wrong. If we continue to this, we will not be able as a community or society to achieve the Paris goals. But if you do understand that through practicing circular economy in every single way, me as a consumer, as a parent, as an employer, as a patron, as an investor, then we are able to enter a circular economy. What we do have, which is an opportunity, is time. It's an unfair advantage because we've got only 10 years to prove that we're able to perform this. So together, just by deciding that we will go there, not having 3 years of testing and 5 years of research, we don't have those 3 or 5 years. We just have to go there and decide who wants to go there with us. So as a listener, if I would be excited from this idea, I would just like say, why, hey, where am I and who are my companions within my ecosystem?
I think also looking at your own situation and your own company and your own linear risk. How are you? Are you very dependent on virgin material dates? How will it be in the future? Let's say my industry is increasing the waste of electrical waste by 3 to 5% every year in EU. We are considered to be the worst industry when it comes to material waste. And at the same time, we are considered the solution of the green shift because we are electrifying the country. And so we need to take responsibility. So look at your own linear risk. Are you depending on virgin materials? Then also look at your portfolio. Are your portfolio representing products that in the future can be solutions or services? If you are able to turn your portfolio from product dependency to service or solution delivery, then you're reducing the linear risk. So look at your business model. And there are a few other steps also you can do. So you can actually assess your linear risk. There are specific, Circular Norway has some tools for that. And when I look at my industry, we are soon reaching the Kodak moment. Either we turn around and redo the business models and redo the value chain and look at other ways of creating value, still through wholesalers, still through electric goods, but we need to do it another way. One of the eye-openers was also China. If you look at China, they are not allowed anymore to export virgin materials. So we are not allowed to export virgin materials from China, which means that you can only sell them as a solution or as part of an embedded product. And the reason is that they are looking at this as a scarcity, and they also like to have these virgin materials back to the country afterwards. And then you have a geopolitical issue also. So there are some assessments you can do by yourself, and then it will be an eye-opener for somebody.
I'm thinking that Elektroforeningen and Catenda and everyone else has been part of the buildingSMART community for many years, 20 years, over 20 years, has already started on this a long time ago. Even if circular economy is a new term, this is the reason why we have been working in buildingSMART for 24 years. That's to achieve a sustainable built environment through smart sharing of information. So we even if we didn't know about circular economy, that has been a goal. So the advice to the rest is to join buildingSMART and join Circular Norway or your circular organization in your country to be part of this, because there's no way back.
I think also you have to consider, we would like to be part of the ecosystem, where you do it by yourself, or will be part of a cooperating ecosystem. That's also a question, because what we see as an advantage, driven by companies or organizations like buildingSMART and also now Circular Norway, is that you are encouraging people working together and sharing, and that's what you're doing in an ecosystem. And you can perhaps have a very bright idea and survive for some time in the ecosystem, but you will not have many friends when it's getting tough, and it will be getting tough in the future.
I think this is the cool thing, this topic now, because all those industries who are, or the gift coming to a construction value chain with the digital value offering, who I meet who are catching the circular economy very fast, they have been working with digital as of years and years. They've been working with user experience, with service design, with systems design. So doing it here or there, or doing it in matters of more resource productivity, it goes with the job and goes with being all the benefits of working digitally. I hope that we are able to onboard the real estate and construction community to see those advantages, and not going in silos and going into closed industries and being proprietary, because that would hurt so much. And but going open and going transparent is the only way of getting here fast.
So then it's good that the finance sector has opened their eyes to circular economy, because you are dependent on finances and so you had the financial sector in some of your meetings.
We've been thinking that when we don't have the regulatory framework to push the industry going circular, how could the unfair benefits of being a non-scarcity society as Norway, having endless amounts of waste and consumption, we think that the advantages of being in Norway would be the technological maturity, but also working with the financial community. How can we start innovating on business models and use the abundance of finance knowledge to be a driving force? And we see that the finance community, those who are working with green bonds and financing, they like the idea and they want to get into this. I dream about having a circular dashboard. We know today the economy is only 9% circular. I could challenge you or your industry, how do we go from 9% to 90% within 9 months or 9 years? But this is when you can start having dashboards calculating and counting what we actually are. This would be also a touch point on the screen where the finance community and the real estate owner, they could meet and look at the same thing. That's how we can make transition happen fast.
I think that's really alert when you look at Netherlands, where the finance industry has actually been the driver of the circular economy. And they're not doing this for good or for charity. They are doing this because they look at money in the industry. So that's I think that's a way of saying that this will come for full, and I think also the parts in the construction industry we need to take a more leading role in the future, so that we take part in it also.
This is very interesting in the sense that I think, from your comment, this is a Kodak moment. And if you take that argument seriously, it sort of means that this will happen anyways. It's the only logical way of moving forward. So unless you participate, you will be out of business. So flipping it around, if you're not taking part, you will lose out. If you go for the ego system, you will definitely lose out. And that's in a way comforting, because it makes logical sense, it makes financially sense. So there are forces here that will just make this happen. If we can if we don't do anything, it will take longer time, of course, but it will probably just happen anyways. That's my take of this. And I really like the argument of moving to a service-based industry or a service-based offering, because that drives the circular economy so much more powerful than just selling products, because you have an incentive to keep costs low and keep the recycling effort going, just like SpaceX is doing when they're launching rockets. Makes sense. Do you guys have any sort of final comments that you want to bring to this table today? Reflections or what have you?
I think we had a very good summary, and I think we, as I mentioned earlier, we have one great advantage. We have a flat structure, we are high on digitalization, we are cooperating, and we are rich. That could be an advantage if we use it well. We have a strong disadvantage, it's that we are rich, we are highly advanced, and we are cooperating, and we are not looking at scarcity. So I think that being we have the ability to be a front runner, but we need to mobilize. And if you look at global players today, they are doing this in a lot of countries. And the worst case scenario, which has already been discussed, is that Norway becomes a dumping market for old products. Because products in the future, and also services as products, will be developed and they will be sold to the circular markets where they are appreciated and where they are based on future-oriented circular business models. If we don't implement those models in Norway and are still product-oriented, short-sighted, we will end up with the old dumping market materials. And this is already discussed on global levels. So we need to get out of that position and make sure that we are a front runner, not a lagger.
Yeah, and I think we can easily be that. The Norwegian industry has been renowned for its progressive implementation of the open BIM and buildingSMART principles for many years. The world looks to Norway, and I think we can easily extend that to the circular economy and be front runners and idols and a model for the rest of the world on this.
It's very interesting, both the discussion and seeing also how I would say starting to look at where we are today, not as a moment of truth, but how can we question the situation and start transitioning. The today business model in construction industry is ripe for disruption. Start talking about how to play with it, and I would say this is the moment you understand how threatened is the square meter investment price. I would really start looking at how is my linear risk. It's not about how long can I postpone going into that room being circular, but how soon can I get ready. Because being, it's only 10 years ago, we can laugh when your availability to music, it depended on you had to pay about 18 euros and you would get 10 songs on a piece of plastic. This was an agreement throughout an entire global industry until one day somebody just pulled out the plug. Because the business model was too out for disruption. And I would say this is not about technology or knowledge. We have been knowing this 40-40-40 industry for too long. But somebody will now challenge the core business model. And I would say most of the global economy is actually exposed into real estate. So this will be maybe a rumble in the jungle, or maybe I can quote one of the commissioners in the EU, hopefully go into this change in a controlled way. But this change will happen anyhow.
Great, this has been a fantastic learning experience for me. I'm very glad that you guys could come and take part in Bimcast episode number 9. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and thank you for enlightening us all.